Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're cracking open a very specific kind of report. It's the Daily Picks, May 30th, 2025, from a site called Putin's POP.
Right, specifically their picks page, putinspop.com/picks.html.
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive is pretty straightforward, really. We want to unpack what this page is actually doing.
Figure out the logic, maybe the stats behind their daily sports betting picks.
Yeah, and just highlight the key predictions they've put out there for today, May 30th.
So kind of like getting the essential download on this source.
Precisely. So you can quickly grasp their angle and, what they're actually predicting. Let's get into what this source material shows us.
Okay, so the first thing I think is how this source presents itself. It's not just dropping picks, right?
Oh, it's more than a list.
Yeah, they frame it as a platform delivering expert predictions, statistical insights. They explicitly say the goal is helping users make informed betting decisions.
And a big part of that informed angle seems to be tracking their own performance. They lead with that.
They do. That's key context. The report gives us these season results broken down.
Right, by different confidence levels they assign.
Exactly. So for what they call strong plays, they're reporting 27 wins and 6 losses.
Okay.
Then good plays, that's 19 wins, 13 losses.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, value plays are listed at 8 wins and 4 losses.
So if you crunch those numbers, 27 and 6 for strong plays, that works out to what? An 81.8% hit rate according to their data?
Which is, pretty high.
And the good plays, 19 and 13, that's about 59.4%.
Still over 50%.
And value plays, 8 and 4, comes in at 66.7%. Interesting that the value hit rate is higher than good in this snapshot.
Yeah, that is interesting. But these percentages are important because they kind of define what a strong or good play means within their system.
Right. It gives context to the labels.
A strong play isn't just a gut feeling. It's something that, historically in their tracking, reportedly hits much more often.
Gotcha. And they sum it all up, too. The report states an overall season record of 54 wins, 23 losses.
And they also mention a bankroll change, reported as plus 14.3%.
Okay, so they're setting the stage. Here's our track record. Based on our statistical approach, now here are today's picks.
Precisely.
So let's dive into those specifics for today, May 30th. Starting with that top category, the strong play.
Okay, the strong play they've highlighted for today is the New York Mets. Moneyline is landed 325. They're playing at home against the Colorado Rockies.
And the probability they assign.
They report a 79% win probability for the Mets.
Okay, high confidence. And the justification seems pretty detailed, loaded with stats.
Oh, yeah. They lean heavily on the Mets pitching. They point to a team ERA of 3.26.
Which they note is third best in the league.
Right. And a solid strikeout rate, too, 9.00 Ks per 9 innings for the staff.
They seem to zero in on the starter, David Peterson.
They do. They call his performance dominant.
Yeah.
And they back that up with not just his 2.79 ERA.
Which is good on its own.
Yeah, but also these expected stats. They list a 3.72 by RA, a 3.46 by FIP.
Maybe quickly explain what those expected stats are trying to capture?
Sure. So xERA, xFIP, they're attempts to measure how well a pitcher should be doing based on things they largely control, like strikeouts, walks, the types of batted balls they allow. It tries to strip out the effects of defense or maybe just bad luck.
Got it. So it's looking under the hood a bit.
Exactly. They also mention his xFIP, which is park-adjusted FIP compared to league average. His is 88, meaning 12% better than average. And his WAR, wins above replacement, is 1.0.
So the report saying Peterson's underlying performance backs up, or maybe is even stronger than his already good ERA suggests?
That seems to be the argument, and they contrast that directly with the Rockies.
Yeah, highlighting Colorado's weaknesses. The offense sounds rough.
They list them as last, 30th in runs per game at just 3.16. Second to last in OPS at .638.
Wow.
And striking out a ton, 26.9% K rate.
And they're pitching.
Also struggling, according to the report. 40th in ERA at 5.61. And they specifically mentioned the Rocky starter, Kyle Freeland.
What about him?
High ERA, 5.86. And his expected ERA, the xERA, is also pretty high at 4.68. So not much relief there in the underlying numbers either.
Okay, so the report connects these dots. How?
They basically argue Peterson's control and ability to miss bats is a really bad matchup for a Rockies lineup that strikes out a lot and doesn't score much.
Makes sense.
And they also think the Mets offense, which they peg at 4.34 runs per game, and a .266 expected batting average, or XBA.
XBA, that's based on quality of contact, right? Like exit velocity and launch angle.
Exactly. They expect that Mets offense to take advantage of Colorado's bullpen.
Which they describe as
shaky. a very high 1.60 WHIP. That's walks plus hits per inning pitched.
Right. And then they bring in another factor.
Yeah, the environment. Citi Field in New York. They note it's generally seen as a pitcher-friendly park.
Okay.
And the forecast for today, only an 11% chance of rain, but warm, 94 degrees Fahrenheit. They say this combination sort of locks in the edge for the Mets pitcher and offense against these struggling Rockies.
Interesting. They factor that in so explicitly. Okay, let's move to the next tier, the good play for May 30th.
All right. The report identifies this as the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
They're home against the Washington Nationals. Money line listed at ANIG of 215.
And the probability here.
Lower than the strong play, as you'd expect, reported at 68% win probability.
So still solid confidence. What's the reasoning?
It starts with the D-backs offense, which the report calls potent.
Okay. Steps.
4.98 runs per game, that's fifth in the league. A .776 OPS, ranking fourth. And a good home run rate on fly balls, 14.8%.
So they score and they hit for power. What about their pitching?
They highlight Merrill Kelly as a reliable arm. His ERA is 3.52, and again, they bring in the expected stats. 3.91 by ERA, 3.53 by FIP, and 89 by FIP, and 1.2 WAR. Pretty solid numbers across the board.
Okay, so how does that compare to the Nationals in this report's view?
The Nats offense is described more as average, 11th in runs per game, 4.36, 17th in OPS, .703. Not terrible, but not elite like Arizona's is portrayed.
And the starting pitcher for Washington?
Jake Irvin. And this is interesting, similar to what we saw before. His traditional ERA looks pretty good, 3.42.
Right.
But the report points out his expected metrics are way higher. A 4.93 by ERA, 4.45 by FIP, a 112 by FIP, meaning 12% worse than average, and only .5 WAR.
So that gap again. The source seems to really emphasize when ERA and xERA disagree. They're suggesting Irvin might be pitching a bit over his head, perhaps.
That seems to be the implication, yeah. That he might be due for some regression based on those underlying indicators.
So how does the report see the matchup playing out?
They argue the Diamondbacks' power, they mention a .256 team XBA, is well suited to attack the Nationals' bullpen.
And how's that bullpen described?
As porous.
Yeah.
Very high bullpen ERA, 6.08, which ranks 29th, and a high bullpen WAT2, 1.61.
Okay, so weak bullpen seems key there. And the environment?
Chase Field in Arizona. Controlled environment, obviously a dome. 0% chance of precipitation, but hot outside, 102 degrees Fahrenheit. The report says this controlled setting favors Kelly's control, and they mentioned his 8.60 strikeouts per 9 innings.
Got it. Okay, one more category, the value play for today.
Right. According to this source, that's the Chicago Cubs, listed at -161. They're hosting the Cincinnati Reds.
And the probability for this one?
Reported at 63%. So the lowest of the three, but still comfortably over 50%.
What's the justification here? Seems like the offense is a big factor.
Huge factor. The report calls the Cubs offense elite, ranks them first in runs per game at 5.89, first in OPS at .785. Also a strong home run to fly ball rate, 14.2%.
Wow, number one in scoring in OPS. That's potent.
Definitely. Pitching-wise, they point to Colin Ray as being steady. His ERA is 3.28. Expected stats are a bit higher, 4.15 by ERA, 3.97 by FIP, exactly league average 100 by FIP, and .7 WAR. So maybe not dominant, but solid.
Okay, and what about the Reds?
The report acknowledges the Reds also have a strong offense. They're 8th in runs per game, 4.63, also with a decent home run rate, 12.9%.
So two good offenses potentially. What about the Reds pitcher?
Andrew Abbott. And here we see that ERA versus expected stats theme again. Abbott has a fantastic-looking ERA, just 1.77.
That's incredibly low.
Right. But the report calls his metrics inflated, pointing to significantly higher expected numbers. 3.59 by ERA, 4.08 by FIP, a 103 by FIP, and 0.9 WAR.
So same pattern as with Irvin for the Nationals. The source sees a pitcher whose traditional ERA looks great, but whose underlying performance suggests maybe it's not sustainable at that level.
Exactly. That seems to be a key part of their analysis for these specific plays today.
So the matchup focuses on?
The Cubs' power, they list a very high .272 team XBA going up against the Reds. Now, interestingly, the report does describe the Reds' bullpen as solid. Yeah, 3.52 bullpen ERA ranked 6th, and a good 1.10 bullpen WHIP. So it's not like the Nationals situation.
So the edge here seems more weighted towards the Cubs' massive offensive advantage, especially against a starting pitcher they think might regress.
That seems to be the core argument, yes. Less about attacking a weak bullpen, more about the starting matchup and overall offensive firepower.
And the environment. Wrigley Field.
Right. Known generally as hitter-friendly. Today's forecast is 15% chance of precipitation, 74 degrees Fahrenheit. The report says these conditions kind of amplify the Cubs' bats. They also note Reyes' strikeout rate, 8.05 K9.
Okay, so it's really fascinating how this report layers these picks. Strong, good, value. It seems directly tied to that reported win probability and presumably the historical hit rates they showed us earlier.
Yeah, it represents different levels of perceived edge based on their analysis.
And what really stands out is just the sheer volume and the types of stats they're pulling in.
Absolutely.
It's not just basic stuff. We're seeing ERA, sure, but also xERA, xFIP, WAR, xBA, these bullpen-specific metrics like BPRA and BPOB, strikeout rates like K% and K9.
And even factoring in, ballpark tendencies in the day's weather forecast.
It paints a picture of a very quantitative approach, doesn't it? This is the basis, according to this source, for their specific predictions.
It really demonstrates that their methodology, as they present it, is deeply rooted in statistical analysis, trying to find predictive value in those deeper numbers.
So let's recap. We've taken this source material from Putin's POP picks for May 30th and really dug into what it's offering.
Yeah, a system that tracks its own performance and gives out these daily picks.
And backs them up with a lot of very specific baseball statistics tailored to today's games. We looked at their reported season results.
Those WL records and hit rates.
And then we went through the detailed reasoning they provided for the strong play, Mets, good play, D-backs, and value play, Cubs.
Covering everything from those starting pitcher expected stats, team hitting, bullpen comparisons.
Right down to the ballpark and the weather. It's a clear case built on data, as presented in the report.
Definitely lays out their argument quantitatively.
Which brings us to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to consider. We've just seen a prediction system built on this really complex web of statistics and probabilities. What does seeing this level of sort of intense data analysis applied to predicting sports outcomes make you think about the relationship between quantitative analysis and prediction in general, whether it's sports or, finance or other complex systems?
Yeah, how much confidence do you place in predictions that come purely from numbers like these?
And are there other factors, maybe things not easily quantifiable, that you'd want to consider beyond the kind of statistics laid out in the source material, something to chew on?